Hi, everybody, and welcome back as we continue with this edition of Proline. We're going to talk about the Titans and Patriots in a moment. First, I'll clue you in as to what I've got going this weekend in pro football. First full week, okay. Very happy with the results. And I had a free offer last week, which was all my action plays at no cost. And I guaranteed that there'd be at least 3 plays. Turned out there were 5. And so that worked out really well for everybody who took advantage. I'm going to do it again this week. All my personal service action plays, and there'll be at least 3 of them, could be more, completely free of charge. All you have to do is call the toll-free number, 1-800-547-4224. It's real easy. One phone call. You got a whole bunch of good games. Have some fun this weekend and pick up some profits. 1-800-547-4224 for this week's preseason at no cost. Titans and Patriots, the no-nonsense Tennessee Titans training camp, to put it mildly. I think that this is a direct result of the Pac-Man Jones fiasco. Vince Young misbehaving a bit last week in civvies come game time. So the message being sent that it's going to be all business for the Tennessee Titans this year, and I think that that's actually going to be a good thing for this football team. The Patriots, they're just loaded and ready for the regular season to start, basically. Belichick, however, is a coach who likes to get good results in the preseason as well.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like Tennessee here, but again, you don't like to go against Belichick no matter what time of year it is. But I was looking back to see how many times over the past few years that New England has been laying as many points as they are for this week's game. It was 6 early in the week in this contest. And in the last 14 preseason games, they've laid more than 4 points just once. They laid 5.5 points towards the end of the preseason. I believe it was in 2005, and they got whipped outright 27-3 by the New York Giants. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to come into this game and get knocked off the blocks like they did in that contest, but the bottom line is I truly believe that you're going to see a more than spirited effort out of Vince Young. I think he's got to reprove himself, if you will, to his teammates that he can be a leader both on and off the field. So I think you're going to see that extra effort out of Vince Young to come out and have a big game. Now, a lot of times that can mean a guy forces things and he makes mistakes and is a detriment to his team rather than helping them out. But I think you're going to see a pretty good game by the Titans. I like their defense, by the way. I don't know if that was a commentary on how bad the Washington Redskins offense is, their top unit, but the bottom line was in the first 2 quarters last week, Tennessee's defense held Washington's starting offense to 117 yards on 32 plays. And I remember at the end of the first half, they decided they wanted to bring their starters back in, Washington did on offense, to try and get something going, something positive at the end of the half. And what happens? They get sacked on the first play, they get a penalty on the next play, they end up running out the clock, and they go to halftime. And, of course, if you had Tennessee last week, you were highly disappointed. We were lucky to have the Redskins last week and get that late win. But the bottom line is I think that Tennessee is going to be just extra juiced for this game, if you will, because I think you're right. You're going to see a no-nonsense approach. You're going to see a team that blew a decent-sized lead in the fourth quarter. And I think Fisher and Young, even though it's preseason, really want to develop that winning formula, that winning attitude before much longer. So I'm going to go with Tennessee in this one. They can lose the game and still cover, getting a touchdown here.
Well, and that's one of the things to consider here, Glenn, is that, over the years, laying big numbers in the NFL preseason, not exactly a recipe for success.
No, it hasn't been. Take that with a grain of salt, though. As you mentioned, Scott, this is a New England team, had a couple of big wins last year in preseason by 23 and 41 points. And the reason for that is Belichick's got a lot of depth. With the exception of the defensive backs, this team, their second and third teamers are very good football players, and most of them are pretty experienced. So you always want to be a little careful here. The only thing I don't like about the situation with Young, I mean, this is a guy who is their franchise. Let's not kid ourselves. This is a guy they don't want to get hurt. Everything I've read about this, though, is Fisher's talked about it, the offensive coordinator's talked about it. We want to try and keep Vince in the pocket more. Well, the only problem, I mean, obviously, then he doesn't get hurt, but the only problem with that, it's like the Phoenix Suns saying, if Steve Nash is so important to us, we don't want him driving to the basket where he's going to get bounced. You take that away from Steve Nash, and suddenly he isn't quite the point guard. So I wonder if this becomes too much of a problem for Young, and he starts worrying about staying in the pocket rather than breaking loose. So
we've seen that happen before.
Well, we have.
The soon-to-be former Atlanta quarterback was a guy who they basically tried to take him out of his game and make him a pocket quarterback. Not very good results. And I don't know that Young, he's such an explosive guy. Why would you? To me, I'm not sure I understand or comprehend why you would draft a guy in the first place
That's what
if you're
I was gonna say.
going to change
Right.
what he does. I mean, if you're looking at a 4th-round pick or something like that and say, you know, if we take him out of this mode and put him into this mode, well, okay, that's fine. I could be the 4th-round pick. I can understand that. But if you're taking this quarterback before Jay Cutler and before Matt Leinart to try and change his style, I don't get the draft
Why
pick.
draft a guy? It's exactly what I was going to say. We're thinking the same thing. And it goes back to Michael Vick. Michael Vick's not an accurate passer. He's not a pocket passer. Vince Young, I think, is a little more accurate than Michael Vick, but we haven't seen it yet at this level where he's had to stay in the pocket and throw the football. But when his running game, when his legs are what makes his passing game more effective, why in the world do you take that away? Now, in all fairness, Jeff Fisher and then Norm Chow at the time did not want Vince Young.
No.
They wanted to go after Matt Leinart. So, in all fairness, you've got a coach who wants a pocket passer, but you got to roll with the changes. You don't have a pocket passer. You got a guy who becomes more effective by the fact he can pull the ball down a run and keeps those defensive linemen and the rushers, the sackers, keeps them honest. If you're going to make them stick in the pocket, it ain't going to happen.
And the other thing Vince Young does is he wins games.
Exactly.
This is a guy who you can look at his numbers and say, well, that's a pretty average-looking stat sheet. But somewhere in that scope or that line, you're going to see it may not show in the box score. It's going to be there's going to be a big play that he made an important play. This is the thing about Young, going back to his Texas days, and we saw it last year out of him too. We had lousy quarterback rating, but he found ways to win football games. I think you let him create. I mean, I'm not going to try and tell Norm Chow how to run an offense, that's for sure. But
We might be
I think that's what Young does best.
Getting ahead of ourselves a little bit here because this is regular season. I'm going to say here, but I mean the problem for Young too. He might find out that he had better wide receivers and running backs when he was at Texas than he does with this team. I mean, they don't have a lot of great skill players, so he's
And the bottom line for
he
this
really
one
has
also
to
is
have
Vince
the
Young
top
and the
of his-
starters are probably going to play a quarter. So we
Oh,
don't
yeah,
want to
that's
jump
true
ahead of it
with
and
both
talk
teams.
about
Although he
that.
may get a little extra time because he didn't get any
Since
this
he
past
gets the
week.
first week. Yeah,
Well,
I mean,
Fisher right now, at least earlier in the week, he said that it's going to be the same as if he would have played last week. So, but we'll see. I mean, I still think Vince Young is going to have that extra incentive to play a little bit better this week and maybe a few more reps.
One thing to also factor in, and I'm not going with the selection of this game, at least not at this point. Belichick doesn't like to lose games. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. They did lose last week, so that scares me a little bit. But the line's kind of big on this game. All right, we're going to continue, and we're going to look at the Saints matchup. They're playing the Bengals. Ocho Cinco. Some interesting news to tell you about Chad Johnson when we come back.
Coming up, a Saturday contest featuring the New Orleans Saints and the Cincinnati Bengals. But first, we'll hear from Smash Mouth handicapper Scott Spraitzer, who continues his gridiron run.